The barn door hung crooked on its hinges, letting in a sliver of moonlight that cut across the hay-strewn floor where Diana Newton lay with her 2 children pressed against her, trying to share what little warmth their threadbare blanket provided in the October chill of 1883. She had walked 17 miles that day, carrying 3-year-old Samuel part of the way while 7-year-old Emma trudged alongside them, never complaining even when her small feet blistered through the holes in her worn shoes. They had left Gainesville, Texas, 3 weeks ago after the landlord nailed a notice to their door giving them 2 days to vacate the rooms above the general store, where Diana had worked since her husband Thomas died in a ranching accident 14 months prior. The store had changed owners, and the new proprietor had no use for a widow and her children taking up space that could be rented for twice what she could afford. Diana had heard there might be work in Ardmore, a growing town just across the border in Indian Territory, where the railroad was bringing new opportunities, and the cattle drives still passed through regularly. She had exactly $4.37 in the small cloth purse she kept tied around her waist beneath her dress, and she knew that would not stretch to cover both lodging and food until she found employment. So when they arrived in Ardmore that evening, footsore and exhausted, and she saw the barn on the edge of town with its door slightly ajar, she made a decision that 6 months ago would have seemed unthinkable. She led her children inside, found a relatively clean corner in the hayloft, and spread out their few possessions to make a temporary nest. "Mama, I am hungry," Samuel whispered against her shoulder, his breath warm on her neck. "I know, sweetheart. In the morning, we will find something good to eat. For now, try to sleep," Diana murmured, stroking his fine brown hair. She had given both children the last of their bread and cheese 2 hours ago, claiming she was not hungry, though her stomach had been cramping with emptiness since noon. Emma shifted on her other side, and Diana felt the little girl's hand find hers in the darkness. "Mama, are we going to live here now?" "No, darling. This is just for tonight. Tomorrow I will find us a proper place and I will get work. Everything is going to be all right." Diana spoke with more confidence than she felt, willing it to be true through sheer determination. She had to believe that bringing them here was the right choice, that Ardmore would offer them the fresh start they desperately needed. She did not know that the barn belonged to Karl Sullivan, a 26-year-old cowboy who had just returned from a 3-month cattle drive to Kansas and was leading his horse toward the structure at that very moment, eager to brush down the animal and finally get some rest in his own bed in the small house he had built with his own hands on the property adjacent to the barn. Karl was 50 yards away when he noticed the barn door was open wider than he had left it. He stopped, his hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip, though he did not draw it. Cattle rustlers were not unheard of in this area, though they typically went after livestock in the fields rather than barns. Still, a man did not survive long in Indian Territory without maintaining a healthy sense of caution. He approached quietly, his boots making soft sounds in the grass. The October night was cool and clear, with enough moonlight to see by once his eyes adjusted. As he drew closer, he heard something that made him pause, the soft murmur of a woman's voice, so low he could not make out the words, followed by a child's sleepy response. Karl's hand moved away from his weapon. He stepped to the barn door and peered inside, letting his eyes adjust to the deeper darkness within. At first he saw nothing unusual, just the familiar shapes of farm equipment, feed sacks, and the empty stalls where he sometimes kept cattle during harsh weather. Then he looked up at the loft and saw them. 3 figures huddled together in the far corner, barely visible in the shadows. For a long moment he stood there, uncertain what to do. His first instinct was to call out, to demand an explanation for their presence on his property. But something stopped him. Perhaps it was the memory of his own mother, widowed when he was 12, struggling to keep him and his younger sister fed and sheltered. Perhaps it was simply the bone-deep weariness in that woman's voice when she spoke to her child, a weariness he recognized from too many hard years of his own. He backed away from the barn slowly, careful not to make noise that might frighten them. He led his horse to the small corral beside his house instead, taking extra time with the brushing and feeding, thinking all the while. Karl had built his house and barn on this land 3 years ago, staking his claim in the unassigned lands before the land runs that would come later in the decade. He ran a modest operation, maintaining a small herd of cattle and hiring himself out for drives when he needed extra money. It was a solitary life, but it suited him. He had no family left. His mother had died of pneumonia 5 years back, and his sister had married and moved to California. He answered to no one, worked when he wanted to work, and rested when he was tired. But as he walked to his house that night, he could not stop thinking about the woman and children in his barn. They had nothing. That much was clear from the sparse pile of belongings he had glimpsed in the loft. And if they were sleeping in a barn in October, what would they do when the real cold set in? Indian Territory winters could be brutal, with ice storms that froze everything solid and northers that brought temperatures low enough to kill cattle in the fields. Karl had always been a practical man, not given to flights of fancy or impulsive decisions. But that night, lying in his bed and staring at the ceiling, he found himself making calculations. He had lumber stored behind the barn, leftover from various projects. He had nails, tools, and most importantly, he had the skills to use them. His father had been a carpenter before turning to ranching, and he had taught Karl well. By the time the false dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, Karl had not slept at all. He rose, dressed, and went outside to examine his lumber pile by lantern light. He had enough, he decided. Just barely enough if he was smart about it. He began to work as the sun crept over the horizon, moving quietly at first so as not to wake his unexpected guests. He had chosen a spot about 30 yards from his own house, close enough to offer protection but far enough to provide privacy. The ground was reasonably level, which would make things easier. Karl marked out a rectangle in the grass, approximately 16 by 20 feet. Nothing fancy, but large enough for a woman and 2 children to live comfortably. He would build it simple but solid. 4 walls, a pitched roof, a door that closed properly, and 2 windows to let in light and air. He started with the foundation, digging shallow trenches and setting stones he gathered from the creek that ran through his property. The work was hard and fast, driven by a sense of urgency he did not fully understand. He just knew that when that woman woke and left the barn with her children, he wanted to have something to show her, something to offer that might convince her to stay. The sun was fully up when Deanna woke to the sound of hammering. For a moment, she was disoriented, forgetting where she was. Then the rough texture of the hay beneath her and the dusty smell of the barn brought it all back. She sat up carefully, trying not to wake the children, and peered over the edge of the loft. Morning light streamed through the gaps in the barn walls, illuminating dust motes in golden shafts. The hammering continued, rhythmic and purposeful, coming from somewhere outside. Deanna's heart began to race. Someone was here. The barn's owner, most likely. They would be discovered, possibly arrested for trespassing. She had heard that justice could be swift and harsh in Indian Territory. She woke the children gently. "Emma, Samuel, we need to go very quietly. Do not make a sound." Emma's eyes went wide with understanding beyond her years. She nodded and began gathering their belongings without being asked. Samuel, still half asleep, whimpered softly until Deanna pressed a finger to her lips and he fell silent, watching her with solemn eyes. They climbed down from the loft carefully. Deanna went first, then lifted Samuel down while Emma descended the ladder with the cautious grace of a child who had learned to be careful. Deanna gathered their bundled possessions and was heading toward the door when a shadow fell across the threshold. She froze, clutching Samuel against her hip while Emma pressed close to her side. The man in the doorway was tall, broad-shouldered, silhouetted against the morning sun so she could not see his face clearly. He held a hammer in one hand. "Please," Deanna heard herself say, her voice steadier than she felt. "Please, we were just leaving. We meant no harm. We only needed somewhere to sleep for the night." The man stepped into the barn, and she could see him properly now. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps not yet 30, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that were an unexpected shade of blue-gray. His face was weathered from sun and wind, his hands calloused from hard work. He wore simple clothing, denim trousers, a worn cotton shirt, and a leather vest. There was no cruelty in his expression, but there was no softness either. He looked like what he was, a man accustomed to hardship and solitude. "You are on my property," he said, his voice deep and measured. "I know." "I am sorry. We are leaving right now." Deanna started toward the door, but he did not move aside. "Where are you headed?" The question surprised her. "Into town, Ardmore. I am looking for work." "You have people there, family?" "No, but I will find something. I can cook, clean, sew, do laundry." "I am a hard worker." Deanna lifted her chin, meeting his gaze despite her fear. She would not beg, would not grovel. She had her pride, even if she had little else. Karl studied her for a long moment, taking in the worn dress that had been mended many times, the two thin faces of the children, the exhaustion in the woman's eyes that no amount of determination could hide. She was young, perhaps 24 or 25, with dark hair pulled back in a simple bun and brown eyes that held both fear and defiance. She reminded him of a cornered animal, ready to fight or flee. "My name is Karl Sullivan. This is my land, my barn." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I am building something, out past the barn. Would you like to see it?" Diana hesitated, confusion replacing some of her fear. "I do not understand. Come look." He turned and walked out of the barn, leaving them the choice to follow or run. Diana made a quick calculation. If he meant them harm, he could have already done it. And there was something in his manner, a straightforwardness that suggested he was not the type of man to play games or set traps. She adjusted Samuel on her hip and took Emma's hand. "Stay close to me," she whispered to her daughter. They followed him around the barn and stopped short at what they saw. The foundation of a small building had already been laid out, the corner posts set and braced. Lumber was stacked nearby, organized and ready for use. Karl stood beside his work, watching their reactions. "What is this?" Deanna asked. "A house. I started at dawn. It will not be finished today, but the frame will be up by tonight if I keep at it. Tomorrow I can get the walls and roof done." He looked at her directly. "It is for you and your children if you want it." Deanna felt the world tilt slightly beneath her feet. "I do not understand. Why would you do this? You need a place to stay. I have the materials and the skill. Seems simple enough. But you do not know us. We are strangers." Deanna's voice wavered between suspicion and something that might have been hope. "You are a woman with 2 children, sleeping in a barn in October. I know enough." Karl picked up a piece of lumber and positioned it against the frame. "There are conditions." Of course there were conditions. Deanna steeled herself, prepared to grab her children and run if he suggested anything improper. "What conditions?" "You keep the place clean and in good repair. You teach your children to respect the property and the animals. And when you find work in town, You contribute what you can afford to the household expenses. Not rent exactly, just a fair share. Deanna stared at him, trying to find the trap in his words. That is all. That is all. He began hammering the lumber into place, the sound sharp and clear in the morning air. I do not need charity, Mr. Sullivan. Good. I am not offering charity. I am offering a business arrangement that benefits us both. You need housing. I could use someone to look after things here when I am out on drives. My own place gets neglected when I am gone for months at a time. And he paused in his hammering. It gets quiet out here. Might be nice to have neighbors. Emma tugged on Deanna's sleeve. Mama, is the man building us a house? Deanna looked down at her daughter's upturned face, saw the fragile hope there, and felt something crack in her chest. She had been strong for so long, making impossible decisions and living with the consequences, always pushing forward because stopping meant giving up, and she had 2 children depending on her. But this unexpected kindness from a stranger threatened to undo her carefully maintained composure. I do not know what to say, she whispered. Karl set down his hammer and turned to face her fully. Say you will stay, at least until you get on your feet. Winter is coming, and this is no country to face it without proper shelter. His voice gentled slightly. I have a sister. She is out in California now, married with children of her own. But I remember what it was like for my mother after my father died. She tried so hard to keep us fed and housed, and people were not always kind. I guess I would hope that if she needed help, someone would offer it. So I am offering it to you. Deanna swallowed hard against the tightness in her throat. My name is Deanna Newton. These are my children, Emma and Samuel. My husband died 14 months ago in a ranching accident outside Gainesville. I worked at the general store there until the new owner decided he needed the rooms we were living in. I heard there might be opportunities in Ardmore, so we came here. Any luck finding work yet? I only arrived last night. I was going to start looking today. Karl nodded thoughtfully. The hotel on Main Street was looking for a cook last I heard. Woman who had the job ran off with a gambler about 2 weeks ago. Pay is not great, but it is steady work. Owner's name is George Patterson. Tell him I sent you. He owes me a favor. Deanna felt tears prickling at her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. Why are you doing this? Truly? Because I can. Because it is the right thing to do. Karl picked up his hammer again. Now, if you are going to town to talk to Patterson, you should go soon. Morning is when he is in the best mood. I have some biscuits and bacon in my house from yesterday if your children are hungry. Not much, but enough to tide them over. We could not possibly take your food, Deanna protested, even as her stomach cramped with hunger. You are not taking it. I am offering it. There is a difference. He pointed toward the house. Doors unlocked. Help yourselves. There is a pump out back for water. Emma was already pulling on Deanna's hand, her eyes bright with the prospect of food. Samuel had woken fully now and was watching Karl with curious but wary eyes. Deanna made her decision. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. We accept your kindness. All of it. Karl, just Karl is fine. Karl. She tested his name on her tongue, feeling strange calling a man she had just met by his given name. Thank you, Karl. He nodded once, a brief acknowledgement, and returned to his hammering. Deanna led her children to the small house, her mind reeling from the unexpected turn their fortunes had taken. Karl's house was simple but well built, with a main room that served as both kitchen and living area, and what appeared to be a bedroom in the back. Everything was neat but sparse, the furnishings purely functional. Deanna found the biscuits and bacon wrapped in cloth on a shelf, along with a crock of butter and a jar of preserves. She set out a modest portion for the children, not wanting to take too much despite Karl's offer. As Emma and Samuel ate with the single-minded focus of hungry children, Diana walked to the window and looked out at the construction site. Karl worked steadily, his movements efficient and practiced. Watching him, she felt a strange mixture of gratitude, confusion, and something else she could not quite name. He was risking so much on strangers. What if she turned out to be dishonest? What if her children were wild and destructive? He knew nothing about them, yet he was building them a house. After the children finished eating, Diana made them wash their hands and faces at the pump, then straightened their clothes as best she could. She needed to make a good impression on this George Patterson, and that started with presenting herself and her children as respectable, despite their circumstances. "I am going into town," she told Karl as she walked past the construction site. "Emma and Samuel will come with me." He looked up from his work, wiping sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. The sun was higher now, warming the October morning. Patterson's Hotel is on the east side of Main Street, two-story building with a green door. You cannot miss it. Will you be all right here? Is there anything I can do before I go? I am fine. Got plenty of water and enough food to last me through the day. You just focus on getting that job. He paused, then added, "If Patterson gives you any trouble, you come back and tell me. Like I said, he owes me a favor, and I mean to see he pays it if necessary." Diana felt warmth spread through her chest at his words, at the protective edge in his voice. It had been so long since anyone had looked out for her and her children. "I am sure it will be fine, but thank you." The walk into Ardmore took about 20 minutes, following the main road from Karl's property. The town was larger than Diana had expected, with several streets of businesses and homes spreading out from the center. She could see the influence of the railroad that had arrived a few years earlier. New buildings constructed with milled lumber instead of rough logs, glass windows shipped in from back east, signs painted in neat lettering advertising everything from dry goods to legal services. She found Patterson's Hotel easily, just as Karl had described. The two-story structure was one of the nicer buildings in town, with a covered porch and rocking chairs where a few men sat smoking and talking. They watched Diana and her children with mild curiosity as she climbed the steps and entered through the green door. Inside, the lobby was clean and well-maintained, with a front desk and stairs leading to the upper floor. A man who looked to be in his 50s stood behind the desk, writing in a ledger. He looked up as they entered, his expression neutral. "Help you, madam, Mr. Patterson. My name is Diana Newton. Karl Sullivan sent me. He said you might be looking for a cook." Patterson's eyebrows rose slightly at the mention of Karl's name. "Sullivan sent you, did he? You have experience cooking?" "Yes, sir. I cooked for my family, and I helped prepare meals at the general store in Gainesville where I worked. I can make anything from simple fare to fancy dinners for special occasions. I work hard, I am reliable, and I do not waste ingredients." "What brings you to Ardmore?" Diana had prepared for this question, knowing that people would ask. "My husband died over a year ago. The general store changed owners, and the new proprietor needed the rooms we were living in. I heard there were opportunities here, so we came looking for a fresh start." Patterson studied her for a long moment, his gaze moving to Emma and Samuel, who stood quietly beside their mother. "Children will need to stay out of the way if you are working. They are well behaved and used to keeping quiet when I am busy. Emma is old enough to watch her brother. Job pays $12 a month plus meals for you and the children while you are working. You would cook breakfast and dinner for the guests, keep the kitchen clean, and help with special requests. Hours are early morning through mid-morning, then evening until after dinner is served and cleaned up. You would have afternoons mostly free." $12 a month was not generous, but with meals included for her and the children, Diana could make it work. Combined with the housing Karl was providing, they would be able to save a little and perhaps eventually afford a place of their own. When would you need me to start? Today, if you are able. I have been doing the cooking myself and I am no good at it. Guests have been complaining. Patterson's stern expression softened slightly. Sullivan is a good man. If he sent you to me, I figure you are worth taking a chance on, but I expect honest work for honest pay. You will get it, sir. I promise. Be here at 5 tomorrow morning. I will show you the kitchen and the pantry, explain what guests expect. We can do a trial period of 2 weeks. If it works out, the job is yours permanent. Diana extended her hand and Patterson shook it, his grip firm and brief. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. You will not regret this. As they left the hotel, Emma squeezed Diana's hand. Mama, you got a job. I did, sweetheart. Things are starting to look up for us. Diana felt lighter than she had in months, as if a weight she had been carrying had suddenly lessened. Not disappeared entirely, but become manageable. They walked back to Karl's property, taking their time, enjoying the October sunshine and the relief of knowing they had somewhere to sleep that night and food to eat. When they arrived, Diana was stunned by the progress Karl had made in the few hours they had been gone. The frame of the house was fully up, the skeleton of walls and roof clearly visible. Karl was on a ladder, securing the roof beams, moving with the practiced ease of someone who had done this work many times before. He climbed down when he saw them approaching. How did it go? I got the job. I start tomorrow morning at 5. Diana could not keep the smile from her face. Good. Patterson is fair if a bit gruff. He will treat you right. Karl wiped his hands on his trousers. House should be weatherproof by tomorrow night. It will not be fancy, but it will keep the rain and cold out. I still cannot believe you are doing this, Diana said softly. Believe it. I do not say things I do not mean. He looked at Emma and Samuel. You children want to help. Nothing dangerous, but I could use someone to hand me nails and keep the water bucket filled. Emma's face lit up. Can we, Mama, if Karl does not mind, and if you promise to be careful and do exactly what he says? I will watch them close, Karl assured her. Over the next few hours, Diana watched as her children helped Karl in small ways, fetching and carrying, learning the names of tools and the purposes of different pieces of lumber. Karl was patient with them, explaining what he was doing and why, never speaking down to them but treating them with a respect that made Diana's heart ache in a way she could not fully explain. She made herself useful as well, finding a broom in Karl's house and sweeping out the barn, organizing the tools and equipment that had been scattered about. It felt good to work, to contribute something however small to repay the enormous kindness Karl was showing them. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Karl climbed down from his ladder and stepped back to survey his work. The frame was complete, and he had already begun attaching the wall boards on the north side, the direction from which the worst weather would come. It is getting dark, he said. We should stop for today. You have done so much, Diana said, looking at the structure that had not existed when she woke that morning. I do not know how to thank you. No thanks needed. You and the children can sleep in my house tonight. I will take the barn. Probably should have offered that last night if I had been thinking straight, but I was tired from the trail and not at my sharpest. We could not take your bed, Diana protested. It is settled. You take the bedroom. Children can sleep with you or in the main room, whichever they prefer. I have bedrolls in the barn that are plenty comfortable. He held up a hand to forestall further argument. It is one night, and then tomorrow you will have your own place. Diana wanted to argue further, but she could see the determination in his face. Karl Sullivan was clearly a man who, once he had made up his mind about something, did not easily change it. That evening, Diana cooked a simple dinner using supplies from Karl's pantry, insisting it was the least she could do. She made beans with bacon, cornbread, and coffee, stretching the ingredients to feed all of them. They ate at Karl's small table, Emma and Samuel chattering about their day helping build the house while Karl listened with what might have been amusement in his eyes. "Mr. Karl showed me how to hammer a nail straight," Emma announced proudly. "You have to hold it steady and hit it square." "And I carried water," Samuel added, not wanting to be outdone by his sister. "I only spilled a little bit." "You both did real good work today," Karl said. "Best helpers I have had in a long time." After dinner, Diana insisted on cleaning up while Karl went to settle his horse for the night. She washed the dishes in a basin, her mind still trying to process everything that had happened in the space of a single day. This morning, she had woken in a barn with no prospects, and no plan beyond a desperate hope that Ardmore would offer something better than what they had left behind. Now she had a job, the promise of a house, and the inexplicable kindness of a man who had no reason to help them but was doing so anyway. When the children were settled for sleep in Karl's bedroom, worn out from their busy day, Diana stepped outside to find Karl sitting on his porch, looking out at the dark shape of the unfinished house. "They are asleep," she said softly. He nodded. "Good. They needed the rest." Diana sat down on the porch step, a respectful distance from him but close enough to talk quietly. "I need you to understand something, Karl. I am not a charity case. What you are doing for us is extraordinarily kind, but I intend to pay you back, every bit of it, however long it takes." "I told you, this is not charity. This is neighbors helping neighbors. We are not neighbors yet. We are strangers you found sleeping in your barn. Then we will be neighbors soon enough, and everyone is a stranger until you get to know them." Karl leaned back against the porch post, his face half in shadow. "I meant what I said earlier. My mother was in a bad way after my father died. People in our town knew it, but most of them turned away. Said it was not their problem, that she should go to her family back east or find another husband. She was too proud to beg and too stubborn to give up. She worked herself near to death trying to keep us fed and clothed. I was just a boy, but I remember." "How did she manage?" One person helped. "A widow woman named Mrs. Chen who ran a boarding house. She gave my mother work cleaning rooms and doing laundry, let us stay in a small room in the attic. Did not charge us much, said she knew what it was like to struggle alone. My mother worked for her until I was old enough to get jobs myself. Mrs. Chen probably saved our lives." Diana listened quietly, understanding now where Karl's impulse to help came from. "What happened to your mother?" "Pneumonia took her 5 years ago. She was only 42, but she was worn out from all those hard years. Sometimes I think she just did not have any fight left when the sickness came." Karl's voice was matter of fact, but Diana heard the grief beneath it. "I am sorry. It was a long time ago, but I guess I never forgot what Mrs. Chen did for us. She did not have to help. She chose to. And now I am choosing to help you and your children. That is all there is to it." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds. Crickets chirping, the distant call of an owl, the soft rustle of wind through the grass. "You asked me earlier why I am doing this," Karl said eventually. "I guess there is more to it than just remembering my mother. Truth is, this place gets lonely. I have my work, and that is good, but sometimes I go days without talking to anyone but my horse. Having you and your children here, it makes the place feel more alive somehow, more like a home instead of just a spot where I sleep between jobs." Diana felt a flutter of something in her chest, a warmth that spread through her despite the cool night air. "We will do our best not to be a burden." You are not a burden, you are welcome here. Karl stood, stretching his arms above his head. I should let you get some rest, you have an early morning tomorrow. Karl, Deanna stood as well, looking up at him. He was taller than she had realized, probably close to 6 feet. Thank you. For everything. He gave her a small smile, the first real smile she had seen from him. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less weathered. You are welcome, Deanna. Sleep well. She watched him walk toward the barn, carrying a bedroll and a lantern, and felt something shift inside her, a loosening of the tight knot of fear and worry that had become her constant companion. For the first time since Thomas died, she felt something that might have been hope. The next morning, Deanna woke before dawn to prepare for her first day at the hotel. She dressed carefully in her best dress, which was not saying much given her limited wardrobe, and braided her hair into a neat crown around her head. Emma woke as she was getting ready, her eyes still sleepy. Mama, are you leaving? Just for a few hours, sweetheart. I will be back after breakfast. You and Samuel stay here and be good. If you need anything, Karl is outside working on the house. Will you bring food home? Yes, darling. Mr. Patterson said we can have meals while I am working, so I will bring breakfast for you and Samuel. Deanna kissed her daughter's forehead. Be brave for me. The walk to town was dark and quiet, the stars still bright overhead. Deanna reached the hotel just as the clock in the town square was striking 5. Patterson was waiting for her in the kitchen, a large room at the back of the hotel with a wood stove, plenty of workspace, and shelves stocked with supplies. Morning, he said gruffly. Let me show you around. He walked her through the kitchen, explaining where everything was kept and what the guests typically expected for meals. The hotel had 8 guest rooms, and on this particular day, 6 were occupied. Most guests wanted simple but hearty fare. Eggs, bacon, biscuits, gravy, and coffee for breakfast, with meat, potatoes, and vegetables for dinner. Any allergies or special requests? Deanna asked, already mentally organizing the work. Man in room 3 does not eat pork. Woman in room 7 wants her eggs barely cooked, practically raw. Beyond that, everyone eats what you make or they go hungry. Patterson handed her an apron. Think you can handle it? Yes, sir. Deanna set to work with a focus and efficiency that came from years of practice. She started the fire in the stove, put coffee on to boil, and began mixing biscuit dough while bacon sizzled in a large iron skillet. The kitchen filled with warmth and good smells as she worked, her hands moving through familiar tasks with practiced ease. By the time Patterson rang the bell for breakfast, Deanna had prepared eggs, bacon, sausage, biscuits, gravy, and fried potatoes. She arranged everything on serving platters and watched nervously as Patterson carried them to the dining room. She cleaned while the guests ate, scrubbing pans and wiping down surfaces, trying not to worry about whether the food was good enough. When Patterson returned, his arms loaded with empty platters, he gave her an approving nod. Had 3 guests ask if you were the new permanent cook. Told them we would see how the trial period goes, but if this morning is anything to judge by, I would say you have the job. Relief flooded through Deanna. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. No need to thank me. You earned it with good work. Now you said you have children. Fix them plates and take them home. Be back by 5 this evening to start on dinner. Deanna prepared generous portions of food for Emma and Samuel, wrapping them carefully in cloth. As she walked back to Karl's property in the growing daylight, she felt a sense of accomplishment that had been missing from her life for too long. She had a job. She had proved she could do it. Her children would eat well today. When she arrived, she found Karl already at work on the house, the morning sun illuminating his progress. He had completed the walls on 3 sides and was working on the 4th. Emma and Samuel were still asleep inside, so Deanna left the food for them and walked over to the construction site. "How is it going?" Karl looked down from where he was nailing boards in place. "Good. Should have the walls finished by noon, then I can start on the roof. How was your first day?" "It went well." Mr. Patterson seemed pleased. Deanna hesitated, then asked, "Can I help with anything here?" "You do not have to do that. You have been working all morning." "I want to help. You are building us a house. The least I can do is assist however I can." Karl considered this, then nodded. "All right. I could use someone to hand me boards as I need them. Saves me climbing up and down the ladder constantly." They worked together through the morning, falling into an easy rhythm. Karl would measure and mark, and Deanna would select the right board and pass it up to him. They did not talk much, but the silence was comfortable, punctuated by the sounds of hammering and sawing. Around mid-morning, Emma and Samuel woke and came outside, having eaten their breakfast. Karl set them to work again with simple tasks, and Deanna marveled at how patient he was with them, never showing irritation when they asked questions or needed something explained a second time. By early afternoon, the walls were complete and Karl had begun on the roof. Deanna went inside to rest for a bit before she needed to leave for the evening shift at the hotel. She lay down on Karl's bed, intending to close her eyes for just a few minutes, but exhaustion caught up with her and she fell into a deep sleep. She woke to Emma gently shaking her shoulder. "Mama, Mr. Karl says it is 4 o'clock. You have to go to work soon." Deanna sat up, disoriented and embarrassed. She had slept for hours. She hurried outside and found Karl putting the finishing touches on the roof, the last shingles being nailed into place. "I am so sorry. I did not mean to sleep so long. You needed it. You have been running on empty." Karl climbed down the ladder and stood back, looking at his work with critical eyes. "It is done. Not fancy, but it will keep you dry and warm." Deanna stared at the small house, unable to quite believe what she was seeing. In less than 2 days, Karl had built them a complete dwelling. It had 4 walls, a solid roof, a door, and 2 windows. It was simple and plain, but it was more than she had dared to hope for. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "Say you like it." "I love it. Karl, I cannot believe you did this for us. Told you I would." He walked to the door and pushed it open, gesturing for her to look inside. The space was empty but clean, with smooth plank floors and walls that let in light through the windows. "I will bring over a bed frame and mattress from the barn today. I have an extra that I have been storing, and a table and couple of chairs. Basic stuff, but it will get you started." Deanna walked through the small house, running her hand along the walls, testing the floor with her feet. Everything was solid and well made, built by someone who knew his craft and took pride in his work. "The children will each have space for a bed," she said, already planning in her mind. "And I can put the table by the window so we have light for meals. Maybe I can make curtains from some fabric scraps. I have some calico in the barn left over from when my sister visited last. She was going to make a dress but never got around to it. You are welcome to it." Deanna turned to face him, this man who had appeared in her life barely a day ago and changed everything. "Why are you being so kind to us?" "I told you why." "No, I mean really. Most men would not do this. Most men would have run us off their property or demanded something in return." Karl met her gaze steadily. "Then I guess I am not most men. I see people in need and I have the means to help, so I do. It is not more complicated than that." But it was more complicated, and Deanna knew it even if Karl did not, or would not admit it. She could see it in the way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention, a softness in his eyes that went beyond simple charity. And she could feel her own response to him, a warmth that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the kind of attraction she had not felt since the early days with Thomas. "I need to go to work," she said, suddenly needing distance to sort through her confusing emotions. "Thank you, Karl, for everything." That evening, as Deanna cooked dinner for the hotel guests, her mind kept wandering back to the small house waiting for her and to the man who had built it. She found herself smiling as she worked, humming under her breath, feeling lighter than she had in months. Over the next 2 weeks, Deanna settled into a routine. She worked early mornings and evenings at the hotel and spent her afternoons with Emma and Samuel, fixing up their new home and helping Karl with various tasks around his property. True to his word, he had provided them with basic furniture, and Deanna supplemented it with items she found discarded in town or bought cheaply from people who were leaving Ardmore. She sewed curtains for the windows from the calico Karl had given her, a cheerful yellow print with small flowers. She traded work at the hotel for dishes and cookware that Patterson no longer needed. Emma helped her plant a small kitchen garden in a sunny spot near the house, putting in vegetables that would grow through the winter: turnips, cabbage, and greens. Karl was around most days, working on projects around his own property or tending his small herd of cattle. He took his meals with them more often than not, and Deanna found herself looking forward to those times, to the comfortable conversations that ranged from the practical to the philosophical. She learned that he had come to Indian Territory from Missouri, looking for land and opportunity. He had worked various jobs: cowboy, ranch hand, even briefly as a deputy marshal, before saving enough to buy his property and start his own operation. He was 26 years old, had never been married, and read books whenever he could get his hands on them, an unexpected trait in a man who made his living with his hands and his skill with cattle. "My father believed education was important," he told her one evening as they sat on his porch while the children played in the yard. "He only had a few years of schooling himself, but he made sure I learned to read and do figures. Said a man who could not read was at the mercy of those who could." Thomas felt the same way, Deanna said. "He was teaching Emma her letters before he died. I have kept it up as best I can, but it is hard when we do not have proper books. I have some primers in the house. My sister's children outgrew them. You are welcome to use them for Emma. You have already given us so much. Books are meant to be read. No point in them sitting on a shelf collecting dust when a child could be learning from them." Deanna looked at him, this quiet man who kept surprising her with his thoughtfulness. "You would have made a good teacher." "Maybe in another life. In this one I am a cowboy who is passable with a hammer." He smiled slightly. "Though I have been thinking I might start taking on carpentry jobs when I am not working cattle. Seems there is need for it with the town growing like it is. You should. You are skilled at it." "Our house is proof of that." "Our house," Karl repeated softly. "I like the sound of that." Something in his tone made Diana's heart beat faster. She looked away, focusing on the children. "You know what I mean, the house you built for us." "I know what you meant, but I also know what I heard." Karl was quiet for a moment. "Deanna, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How long has your husband been gone?" 14 months. Almost 15 now." Deanna's throat tightened. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Do you still love him?" The question was so direct, so unexpected, that Deanna did not know how to answer at first. "I will always love him. He was a good man, a good husband and father. But I have learned that life goes on whether we are ready for it or not. I have to keep moving forward for my children." "That is not quite what I asked." Deanna turned to look at Karl, her heart pounding. "What are you really asking me?" "I am asking if you are ready to consider the possibility that there might be someone else. Someday. Someone who could care for you and your children." someone who already does care for you. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken feelings. Deanna's mouth went dry. "Karl, you do not have to answer now," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know. I did not build you that house just to be neighborly, Deanna. I built it because from the moment I saw you in that barn, trying to be brave for your children even though you were scared and alone, I could not stop thinking about you. I built it because I wanted you to stay. Because I wanted a chance to see if maybe, over time, you might come to feel something for me too." Diana felt tears burning in her eyes. "I do feel something for you. That is what frightens me. It has only been a few weeks. How can I trust what I am feeling? Take all the time you need." "I am not going anywhere." Karl reached out and gently took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "I am a patient man. I can wait." They sat there on the porch, hands clasped, watching the sun set while Emma and Samuel chased fireflies in the gathering dusk. Diana felt as if she were standing at the edge of something vast and unknown, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Over the following weeks, the relationship between Diana and Karl deepened in small, quiet ways. He would show up at her door with fresh vegetables from his garden or a rabbit he had shot for stew. She would bring him portions of the food she made at the hotel, knowing he often neglected his own meals when he was busy with work. They fell into the habit of sharing at least one meal a day together, with Emma and Samuel becoming increasingly comfortable around Karl, treating him less like a stranger and more like family. One evening in early November, when a cold front had blown through and the temperature had dropped sharply, Karl showed up at Diana's door with an armload of firewood. "Going to be a cold night," he said. "Wanted to make sure you had enough to keep the house warm." "Thank you. Come in for coffee." It had become their evening ritual, coffee and conversation after the children went to bed. Karl stepped inside, and Diana noticed him looking around with what might have been satisfaction. In the weeks since they had moved in, she had transformed the bare house into a real home. The curtains she had made hung cheerfully at the windows. Braided rugs covered the floor. Emma's drawings decorated one wall, and Samuel's wooden toys were neatly arranged in a corner. "You have done a lot with the place," Karl said. "It is easier to make a house a home when you care about it." Diana poured coffee into 2 cups and handed him one. "I never thanked you properly for all of this, for giving us a chance at a real life. You have thanked me plenty, and you have more than earned your place here with all the work you do." Karl took a sip of coffee, then set the cup down. "Diana, I need to tell you something. I got word today that there is a big cattle drive forming up in early December. They are looking for experienced hands and the pay is good. Real good." Diana's stomach dropped. "How long would you be gone?" 3 months, maybe 4. "We would be taking a herd up to Kansas, selling them there, then coming back." "That is a long time." "It is. But the pay would set me up good for the winter and spring. I could maybe even expand my herd, hire some help for the heavier work." Karl looked at her intently. "Question is, would you and the children be all right here on your own? I know it is a lot to ask. We would manage. We have before." Diana tried to keep her voice steady, but she could not hide the disappointment she felt. She had grown used to having Karl around, to his steady presence and quiet support. "I would make sure you had everything you needed before I left. Extra firewood, supplies, anything you can think of. And I would tell people in town to look in on you, make sure you were doing all right." "When would you leave?" "Early December. About 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks." It seemed like no time at all and yet an eternity. Diana felt a sudden urgency, a need to say things that had been building in her heart but that she had been too cautious to voice. "Karl, before you go, there is something I need to tell you." He waited, his blue-gray eyes fixed on her face. When you said you cared about me, that you wanted to see if I might feel the same way about you, I told you I needed time. And you gave it to me without question or complaint. You have been patient and kind and respectful, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. That is what you needed, Karl said simply. But what I need now is to tell you the truth. I do not need more time, Karl. I already know how I feel. Deanna took a breath, her heart racing. I love you. I think I have loved you since the morning I woke up and found you building us a house. You showed me and my children a kindness we did not expect and could never repay. You gave us not just shelter, but hope. You made me believe that good things could still happen, even after everything we had lost. Karl's expression shifted, a light coming into his eyes that made him look younger, more vulnerable. Deanna, let me finish, she said softly. I loved my husband and I will always honor his memory, but he is gone and I am still here and so are you. And when you leave in December, I want you to know that someone will be waiting for you to come back, that you will be missed every day you are gone, that you have a home here with us if you want it. Karl set down his coffee cup and crossed the small room in 2 strides, pulling Deanna into his arms. She went willingly, her head fitting perfectly against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of him, wood smoke and leather and the outdoors. I want it, he said against her hair. I want you and Emma and Samuel. I want this life we have been building together. I love you, Deanna. God help me. I have loved you from the first moment I saw you, even though I knew it was crazy to fall so fast. Deanna pulled back just enough to look up at his face. Then it is a good thing I am just as crazy. He kissed her then, a gentle press of lips that deepened into something more passionate, more urgent. Deanna kissed him back, her hands coming up to frame his face, feeling the rasp of stubble against her palms. It had been so long since she had been touched this way, held this way, and she had forgotten how good it could feel to be close to someone. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Karl rested his forehead against hers. I do not want to leave you in December. But you will, because the money is good and we are practical people who think about the future. Deanna smiled up at him. And I will be here when you get back, keeping your house in order and waiting for you. Marry me, Karl said suddenly, before I leave. I do not want to go away without making it official, without everyone knowing you are mine and I am yours. Deanna's breath caught. You want to get married? In 3 weeks? Is that too fast? Too soon? Karl searched her face anxiously. I know it has only been a couple of months and people will talk. But I do not care about that if you do not. I know what I want, Deanna. I want to marry you and be a father to your children. I want to build a life with you that lasts the rest of our days. Yes, Deanna whispered, joy flooding through her. Yes, I will marry you. Karl kissed her again, deeper this time, pouring into it all the feelings that had been building between them for weeks. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling, flushed and happy. I do not have a ring, Karl said. I should have thought of that before I asked. I do not need a ring, I just need you. You will have both. I will get you a proper ring before the wedding. Karl took her hands in his, looking down at their joined fingers. I never thought I would have this. A family. Someone to love who loved me back. I had made my peace with being alone. And then you showed up in my barn and changed everything. We were meant to find you, Deanna said. I believe that. Out of all the barns we could have sheltered in, we found yours. That was not chance, Karl. That was fate. They talked late into the night, making plans for the wedding and the future. They would marry in 2 weeks, giving them a week together as husband and wife before Karl had to leave for the cattle drive. It would be a simple ceremony at the small church in town, with just a few witnesses. Deanna would continue working at the hotel while Karl was gone, and when he returned in the spring, they would decide together what came next. As Karl finally headed back to his own house in the early morning hours, Deanna stood in the doorway and watched him go, her heart so full she thought it might burst. She had come to Ardmore with nothing but her children and a desperate hope for something better. She had found so much more than she ever could have imagined. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Deanna told Patterson she was getting married, and the hotel owner surprised her by offering to host a small reception after the ceremony, refusing payment and saying it was his wedding gift to them. The women Deanna had met through her work at the hotel rallied around her, helping her alter a dress she had found at the dry goods store so it would fit properly, and teaching Emma how to make a simple bouquet from dried flowers. Karl spent his days working twice as hard, trying to get everything done before he left for the drive. He hired a young man from town to look after his cattle while he was gone, and he spent hours stocking Deanna's house with enough supplies to last through the winter. He also, true to his word, bought her a ring, a simple gold band that fit perfectly on her finger. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cold, with frost on the ground and a brilliant blue sky overhead. Deanna dressed carefully in her altered gown, a simple blue dress that Emma declared made her look like a princess. She braided her dark hair and wound it in a crown around her head, tucking a few dried flowers into the strands. Emma and Samuel were dressed in their best clothes, which Karl had quietly purchased for them without Deanna knowing. When she saw her children looking so clean and new, she started to cry. "Mama, why are you sad?" Samuel asked, his small face worried. "I am not sad, sweetheart. I am happy." Sometimes people cry when they are very, very happy. The ceremony was held at the small church, with Patterson serving as witness along with a few of the women from the hotel. The minister was a kind, older man who kept the ceremony simple but heartfelt. When Karl placed the ring on Deanna's finger and spoke his vows, his voice was steady and sure, his eyes never leaving her face. "I promise to love you and cherish you for all the days of my life, to be a good husband to you and a good father to Emma and Samuel, to work hard and provide for our family, and to always treat you with the respect and kindness you deserve." Deanna spoke her own vows with tears streaming down her face. "I promise to love you and stand by your side through whatever comes, to build a home with you that is filled with warmth and laughter, to trust you and support you and be grateful every day for the gift of your love." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Karl kissed her gently, mindful of their audience. But his eyes promised more for later, and Deanna felt heat rise in her cheeks. The reception at the hotel was simple but joyful, with food and music and the warm wishes of their small community. Deanna danced with Karl, Emma, and even little Samuel, who stood on her feet and giggled as she swayed. She felt surrounded by love and goodwill, amazed at how much her life had changed in such a short time. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Karl pulled Deanna aside. "Ready to go home, wife?" The words sent a thrill through her. "Yes, husband." They walked back to the property together, Emma and Samuel running ahead in the moonlight. Patterson had offered to keep the children overnight, but Deanna had declined, not wanting to be separated from them so soon. They would figure out the sleeping arrangements together, as a family. When they reached home, Karl built up the fire in Deanna's house, their house now, while she got the children ready for bed. Emma and Samuel were exhausted from the excitement of the day and fell asleep almost immediately. Finally, Deanna and Karl were alone. They stood facing each other in the firelight, suddenly shy despite everything they had said and promised to each other. "I built this house for you," Karl said softly, "but now it is ours, our home, our life together." "Our home," Deanna repeated, stepping into his arms, "our family." He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, and she responded with equal passion. They made love for the first time that night, learning each other's bodies with tenderness and desire, creating new memories to overlay the old. Deanna felt cherished and wanted in a way that made her heart ache with happiness. Afterward, lying in Karl's arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, Deanna felt a peace she had not known in years. This was where she belonged. This was home. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Karl replied, his arms tightening around her. Always. The week they had together as husband and wife before Karl had to leave passed far too quickly. They spent every possible moment together, learning the rhythms of married life, blending their households and their lives into one cohesive whole. Karl taught Emma and Samuel how to care for the chickens he had bought as a wedding present, and Deanna marveled at how naturally he fell into the role of father, patient and loving with her children. The morning Karl had to leave for the cattle drive arrived cold and gray, with the threat of snow in the air. Deanna woke before dawn to find him already dressed, packing the last of his supplies. She rose and made breakfast, knowing he would need a good meal before the long ride ahead. They ate together, Emma and Samuel still sleeping, speaking in low voices about practical matters, where the extra money was hidden, who to contact if there were problems when he expected to be back. "Should be home by late March, early April at the latest," Karl said. "Depends on weather and how the drive goes. We will be fine. Do not worry about us." "I will worry anyway. It is what husbands do." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Take care of yourself, Deanna. Do not work too hard. And if anything happens, anything at all, you send word to me. Patterson knows the route we are taking. Nothing will happen. We will be right here, waiting for you." When it was time for him to go, Deanna walked him outside to where his horse was saddled and ready. Emma and Samuel had woken and come out to say goodbye, both trying to be brave but fighting back tears. Karl hugged each of them tightly. "You take care of your mother while I am gone, and keep up with your lessons. I expect to see how much you have learned when I get back." "We will," Emma promised, her voice small. Karl turned to Deanna last, pulling her into his arms. "I do not want to go, I know, but you have to. The money will set us up for a good long while." Deanna held him tight, breathing in his scent, memorizing the feel of his arms around her. "Come back to me, Karl Sullivan. Always." He kissed her deeply, not caring that Emma and Samuel were watching. "I love you. I love you too." She watched him ride away, staying outside until he was just a speck on the horizon. Emma and Samuel stood on either side of her, each holding one of her hands. "Mama, when will Karl be back?" Samuel asked. "In the spring, sweetheart, when the flowers start to bloom." "That is a long time." "It is, but it will pass before we know it, and then our family will be together again." Deanna was determined to keep those words true. She threw herself into work and into caring for Emma and Samuel, keeping busy so she would not dwell too much on Karl's absence. She continued her job at the hotel, and in her free time, she worked on projects around the house, preparing for Karl's return. Winter set in hard that year, with ice storms and bitter cold that kept people close to their fires. Deanna was grateful for the solid house Karl had built, which kept them warm and dry even in the worst weather. She was also grateful for the good supply of firewood he had stocked before he left, and the extra money he had hidden for emergencies. She received letters from Karl, brought by cowboys passing through on their way to various destinations. His writing was simple and straightforward, telling her about the drive, the weather, the men he worked with. But woven through the practical details were words of love and longing that made her heart ache. "I think of you every day," one letter said. I think of coming home to you and the children, of sitting by our fire and hearing about your days. I think of holding you in my arms at night and waking up beside you in the morning. That is what keeps me going through the long, cold miles and the hard work, knowing you are waiting for me. Diana treasured those letters, reading them over and over until the paper grew soft from handling. She wrote back when she could find someone heading in the direction of the drive, telling him about their daily lives, about Emma's progress with her reading and Samuel's growth, about the small improvements she was making to the house. Christmas came and went quietly. Diana made a special meal and small gifts for the children from things she had saved and made in secret. She hung one of Karl's shirts on a chair by the fire, wanting to feel his presence even though he was far away. On Christmas night, after the children were asleep, she sat by the fire and wrote him a letter. I miss you more than words can say. The house feels empty without you, even though Emma and Samuel fill it with their noise and laughter. But we are managing well, and we are safe and warm, and we are counting the days until you come home. Hurry back to us, my love. Your family needs you. January and February were the hardest months, with brutal cold and snow that sometimes kept them housebound for days at a time. But Diana persevered, keeping the children entertained with lessons and games, maintaining the house and property as best she could with the help of the young man Karl had hired to tend the cattle. She also discovered in late February that she was pregnant. The realization came with a mixture of joy and fear. She was happy to be carrying Karl's child, to know that their family would grow. But she also worried about how she would manage, especially if Karl was delayed in his return. She told no one except Patterson, who immediately reduced her hours and insisted she take things easier. Last thing I need is for you to work yourself into a sickness, he said gruffly. You take care of yourself and that baby. I will figure out the rest. Diana was touched by his concern and by the way the community rallied around her. Women she barely knew stopped by with food and offers of help. The doctor in town checked on her regularly, refusing payment. Even the minister's wife came by to sit with her and talk, offering wisdom and reassurance. In early March, as the first hints of spring began to show in patches of green grass and budding trees, Diana received word that the cattle drive was on its way back. They had successfully sold the herd in Kansas and would be home within 2 weeks. She could hardly contain her excitement. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, made new curtains, and prepared Karl's favorite foods. Emma and Samuel caught her enthusiasm, chattering constantly about all the things they would tell Karl when he returned. On a warm afternoon in late March, Diana was outside hanging laundry when she saw a rider approaching. Her heart leaped as she recognized the horse, then the man riding it. Karl was home. She ran to meet him, not caring that she was leaving wet sheets in the basket. He dismounted while the horse was still moving and caught her in his arms, spinning her around as she laughed and cried, "You are home. You are finally home. I am home." He set her down and cupped her face in his hands, studying her intently. "God, I missed you. Every single day." "I missed you too. So much." Diana kissed him, pouring all her longing and love into it. Emma and Samuel came running from the house, shouting with joy. Karl swept them both up, one in each arm, laughing at their excited chatter about everything that had happened while he was gone. Finally, the 4 of them went inside, Karl's arm around Diana's waist, the children dancing ahead of them. Home. They were all home. That evening, after the children were asleep and they were alone in their bedroom, Diana told Karl about the baby. "You are pregnant." His face lit up with wonder and joy. "Really, really. I am about 3 months along. The baby should arrive in late August or early September." Karl placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach, his expression awed. "A baby, our baby. Are you happy?" Happy, Deanna, I am beyond happy. I am. He searched for words. I am grateful for you, for Emma and Samuel, for this life we have built, and now a baby, our family is growing. I was worried you might think it was too soon. Too soon. We are married, we love each other, and we are making a life together. There is no such thing as too soon for our child. Karl kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I love you so much. Thank you for this gift. They made love that night with a tenderness and passion that came from months of separation and the joy of reunion. Deanna felt complete again, whole in a way she had not been since Karl left. The next morning, Karl announced he was done with long cattle drives. I do not want to be away from you and the children for months at a time, especially not now, with the baby coming. I am going to focus on our own herd and take carpentry jobs around town. It will be enough. Are you sure? The pay for the drives is so good. I am sure. Some things are more important than money. My family is one of them. Over the following months, Karl kept his word. He built up a steady carpentry business, taking on jobs building and repairing structures around Ardmore. His skill was much in demand as the town continued to grow, and he earned a good living while being able to come home every night. Deanna continued to work at the hotel until she was 7 months pregnant, at which point Patterson insisted she stop. You have done more than enough. Rest now and get ready for that baby. She spent her final weeks of pregnancy preparing, making tiny clothes and blankets, setting up a cradle that Karl had built with loving care. Emma was excited about becoming a big sister to a new baby, not just to Samuel. And even Samuel, now 4 years old, seemed to understand that something special was coming. On a hot evening in early September, Diana's labor began. Karl sent the young man who helped with the cattle to fetch the doctor and the midwife, then stayed by Diana's side, holding her hand and offering encouragement as the contractions grew stronger. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Karl never left her, wiping her face with cool cloths, helping her walk when the midwife said it would help, murmuring words of love and support. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, their son was born. He came into the world wailing lustily, his face red and his fists clenched. The midwife cleaned him and wrapped him in a blanket, then placed him in Diana's arms. You have a fine, healthy boy, she announced with a smile. Diana looked down at her son, tears streaming down her face. He was perfect, with a cap of dark hair and eyes that would probably turn the same blue-gray as his father's. Hello, little one, we have been waiting for you. Karl leaned over them both, his own eyes wet. He is beautiful. You are beautiful. God, Deanna, look what we made. What should we name him? Deanna asked, looking up at her husband. I was thinking, James, after my father. If that is all right with you, James Sullivan. It is perfect. Emma and Samuel were allowed in to meet their new brother, both of them awed by how tiny he was. Emma gently touched his small hand, and James's fingers wrapped around hers instinctively. He is holding my hand, she whispered, delighted. He knows you are his big sister, Karl said. He knows he is lucky to have you. That night, with the baby sleeping in his cradle and the children tucked into their beds, Karl and Deanna lay together in the darkness, exhausted but happy. You ever think about that first night? Deanna asked softly. When you found us in your barn, all the time. Best night of my life, even though I did not know it then. If someone had told me that morning that in a year's time I would be married to you with a new baby, I would have thought they were crazy. Life has a way of surprising us, sometimes in the best possible ways. Karl kissed her temple. I love you, Deanna Sullivan. I love you too. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. Karl's carpentry business thrived, and he eventually hired helpers to take on the larger jobs. Deanna went back to work at the hotel part-time once James was old enough, enjoying the work and the independence it gave her. Their family grew with the addition of 2 more children. A daughter they named Rose when Deanna was 28, and another son they named William when she was 30. Emma grew into a responsible young woman who helped care for her younger siblings, and eventually married a schoolteacher who moved to Ardmore when she was 19. Samuel showed an aptitude for working with animals and eventually took over the management of Karl's cattle operation. James inherited his father's skill with carpentry, and Rose became a teacher herself. William, the baby of the family, surprised everyone by showing an interest in medicine and eventually became a doctor. Karl and Deanna's house, the one he had built in a single day and night when she needed it most, remained at the center of their lives. They added rooms as the family grew, and Karl's skilled hands kept everything in perfect repair. But the original 4 walls, the ones he had raised with such determination and hope, remained the heart of the home. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Deanna stood in the doorway of that house, watching the sun set over the property they had built together. Their children were grown now, starting families of their own, but they had all come home for the celebration. The yard was filled with laughter and the sounds of grandchildren playing. Karl came up behind her, slipping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about? About how far we have come. About that night I slept in your barn with Emma and Samuel, terrified and not knowing what the next day would bring. And look at us now. 5 children, more grandchildren than I can count some days, and a life that is richer than I ever imagined possible." Deanna turned in his arms to face him. At 51, Karl had gray in his hair and lines around his eyes, but he was still the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago. Still kind, still steady, still the foundation on which their family was built. "You saved us, you know. When you built us that house, you gave us more than just shelter. You gave us hope. You gave us a future." "You saved me too," Karl said softly. "I was so lonely before you came. I did not even realize how lonely until I had you to compare it to. You and the children, you made my life worth living. I love you, Karl Sullivan. After all these years, I still fall a little more in love with you every day. And I love you, Deanna Sullivan, my barn angel, my wife, my everything." They kissed as the sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, surrounded by the laughter of their family, standing in the doorway of the house that had started it all. The house he had built for a desperate woman and her children, never knowing it would become the foundation for a love that would last a lifetime. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Deanna looked around at everything they had created together. The thriving property, the happy children and grandchildren, the life built on love and trust, and the kindness of a cowboy who had seen people in need and chosen to help. She thought about all the decisions that had led her to that barn on that October night in 1883. The heartbreak of losing Thomas, the desperation of being evicted from her home, the long, hard walk to Ardmore with nothing but hope to sustain her. At the time, it had seemed like the lowest point of her life, but it had actually been the beginning of everything good that followed, because she had found Karl, or perhaps Karl had found her. Either way, they had found each other, and in finding each other, they had built something beautiful and lasting. The party continued late into the night, with music and dancing and the sharing of stories old and new. When finally the last guests had departed and the house was quiet, Karl and Deanna stood together on their porch one final time, looking out at the land they had made their own. "You have any regrets?" Deanna asked. "Not a single one. Every choice I made, every road I took led me to you." "How could I regret any of it? Me neither." Even the hard parts, even the pain, it all had purpose. They went inside finally, to the bedroom they had shared for 25 years in the house Karl had built in a single day. As they prepared for sleep, Deanna caught sight of their reflection in the mirror, a couple in their early 50s, weathered by time but still strong, still together. "We did good, did we not?" she said. Karl came up behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "We did better than good. We built a life worth living, together." "Together," Deanna repeated, turning to embrace her husband, "always together." And as they fell asleep in each other's arms, surrounded by the walls Karl had raised and the love they had nurtured over the years, Deanna sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for that October night when a cowboy had found a woman and her children sleeping in his barn, and instead of turning them away, had built them a house by morning. That single act of kindness had changed all their lives forever, creating a legacy of love that would continue long after they were gone, carried forward in the hearts and lives of their children and grandchildren. The house still stood, solid and strong, a testament to what could be built when compassion met need, when a good man chose to help rather than turn away. It was more than wood and nails. It was hope made tangible, love made manifest, a future built from the rubble of the past. And it all started with a cowboy who saw a woman in need and decided to do something about it, who worked through the night to give her and her children shelter, who gave his heart along with his home and received a love in return that would last all the days of his life. That was their story. That was their legacy, and it was perfect.